This is the Above Average Podcast, and you are listening because you want an above average life. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Above Average Podcast, the podcast where we talk to above average people about their above average lives. Now, my guest today is someone who spent the last 2 decades building businesses, but also rebuilding what it means to be a healthy, high-performing man. He's the founder of Alphagenix, where he helps men take control of their hormone health, their energy, and their sex lives. Aside from being a true medical professional, he's a guy who journals, meditates, climbs mountains, and once sat down with a shaman in Central America as well, which is really cool. He's perfectly blended the medical with the spiritual, and is a man with a dedicated mission. I'm excited to get into the real story of it all and do a real deep dive into the modern man's health. So please welcome Mr. Ross Tomkins to the show. How are you, mate?
Very, very good. Looking forward to it. It's taken us a while, hasn't it?
It has, mate. But it's always worth it in the end, isn't it? I feel like I say that to everyone that I've managed to get on after, what was it, a year, did we say?
I think it's a year, yeah.
Yeah, because
mainly because I've been away.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. But I remember I originally messaged Paul Mort about you, obviously, because I know he's involved with Alphagenix to some degree, and I was like, I'm really interested in TRT because I keep hearing it on podcasts, but never in like mainstream media. I guess it's kind of like something under the scenes that would be really beneficial to a lot of men, but it's never talked about. So we'll get into it. But there's a lot I want to cover today, actually, mate. But let's take a look at first of all who you are. So where did this journey of health actually start for you? Was there a point that forced you to stop and reassess your health?
So I guess there's 2 ways to answer that question. So my health journey started probably as a teenager, and I just really enjoyed sport. That led me to being a physiotherapist, which is kind of where that sort of sport, physio, they go together quite nicely. Yeah. Led me into sort of the medical profession. But it was when I started my own business back in my early 30s and my health started to deteriorate that I really got more involved. I guess before that, like many of us, we take our health for granted.
Yes.
But then all of a sudden, when I was aching everywhere, had terrible brain fog, couldn't really think straight, I had to kind of take a deeper dive. And that's what led on to Ross Tomkins 2.0 or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Was that originally, was that Therapy Direct, your original business? Or
Therapy Direct was the original one.
Yeah.
Started that in 2006. So, had 2 children, started a business all around the same sort of time. I and some of the doctors that I saw at the time just thought I was busy. Thought I was stressed, had a lot on. And all the symptoms I was having at the time were sort of just swept under the carpet. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. You're working too hard. Just get on with it, basically.
Yeah, well, it is interesting that though, because 2 kids and then starting up a business as well. Like, did you just hate yourself in that moment? You're just like, I'm going to take on all this, or was it like a planned decision to have everything sort of done at once?
It definitely wasn't planned. It was my wife that said you should start a business because you're really good at what you do.
Nice.
Like, people get better when they work with you. Okay. So started that. Yeah. Started that, and then our first child came along a couple of years after that, when I was still working. Leaving the house at 6 a.m, getting home at 10 p.m, doing that whole thing you do when you start a business. And then second, 2 years after that, so it was all quite close together, and was still very much in that early genesis sort of period of work.
Yeah, what was the original symptoms that you noticed? That because obviously you said like aches and pains, brain fog. So what was the first one that you were really like, oh, something needs to change here?
So I was having lots of symptoms for quite a while, and as I said, I put them down to really just getting older, being busy, waking up at crazy times because your son or daughter needs changing or whatever. Yeah. But it was actually a testicular pain that was the one that stopped me in my tracks, and I thought maybe there's something going on. So my wife sent me to hospital, or sent me to the doctors as usual. I think you need to take this seriously now. So I went and had some blood tests. The blood test came back, and the doctor said, "Oh, I think your test has been contaminated. This can't be right. We've never seen levels like this in someone so active. Okay. You should be on a sofa, massively overweight, because your thyroid isn't working at all." And that at the time was the diagnosis they gave me. They gave me an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's, and my thyroid wasn't functioning. But what sort of perplexed them is I just got back from Kilimanjaro. I just climbed a mountain, and they went, you shouldn't be able to do that.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I said, well, I believe it's mind over matter. Like, I have to get up in the morning to go to work. I have to get up and see my kids in the middle of the night. And I choose to go and dominate this mountain, you know, conquer this physical thing that I wanted to do, this physical challenge. And it perplexed them. So I kept coming back, and the symptoms got worse and worse and worse and worse, until the point where I remember driving home from work one day, and I was driving along, and I gave myself a little mental test to name as many things in the car as I could. And I failed at the first attempt, and I couldn't even tell you what the steering wheel was called. It was like thinking through soup or through fog.
Yeah.
And that was the scariest moment when I got home, when I said to my wife, I can't carry on like this. Like, I can't think at all.
Yeah.
And she said, it doesn't matter what it takes, where we have to go, we're going to get to the bottom of it. By this time, I'd seen 2 GPs and 3 endocrinologists on the NHS. And all of them had said variations of the same thing, which is, there's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head. Get on with it.
Great help, yeah.
Very helpful, yeah. And then I went down to London. I actually typed into Google something along the lines of, you know, vague aches, pains, brain fog.
Yeah.
And I found this guy just off Harley Street, Wimpole Street. I went down to see him. He said, what's wrong? I said, it's a long story, Dr. Willis. He said, you paid for an hour. You can talk for an hour. And that was my first experience of private healthcare. And I did. I spoke for 56 minutes about how all these aches, pains, brain fog. My wife knew how bad I was, based on how many chocolate bars, you know, came out of the car with me when I opened the door, because I was just keeping myself going on sugar. And at the end, he said, it's obvious what's wrong with you. I said, well, what? I've seen 5 doctors, 3 of them were experts. He said, you got low testosterone. I went, low testosterone? He said, yeah, you might need HRT. And 2 things went through my head. One, HRT's for women.
Yeah.
And the second thing, I paid privately for the first time ever. This guy probably wants to tell me something. I was a little cynical.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that, yeah.
Yeah, because at the time, I'd only ever gone to the NHS, you know, and it is a great system for certain things, particularly acute things, but not things like this.
So you get what you pay for, don't they? So
Yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, can you prove this? And he said, yeah, we'll do a blood test. If the test comes back above this number, I was completely wrong. If it comes back from here to here, we can probably fix it with your diet, with exercise. But if it comes back below this number, you need HRT. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's do this test then. And he did it, and he was absolutely right. My testosterone was very low. Interestingly, not low enough to be classified as low testosterone on the NHS, but low enough based on the International Society of Sexual Medicine, which has only just now been registered or recognised in the UK in the NHS. And we're talking 12, 13 years ago now. So I was lucky that this guy was light years ahead. And he started my treatment, and that was that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously you had the physical symptoms there. You said, like, you had the testicular ache and the brain fog and stuff like that. What did it change in you as a person? Did you notice anything about your personality change?
Personality, I don't think changed too much. Other than the fact I would say I was apathetic. That's probably the best word to use.
Okay.
And actually, for many years, I would have said that I didn't have a low libido problem. But looking back, I did. I just called it apathy.
Yeah.
You know, so Joanne, my wife, would be like, right, you know, kids have gone to sleep or whatever. And I go, yeah, let's go to sleep instead.
Yeah.
You know, and in my head, it wasn't a libido problem.
It was
because I still, exactly. I still loved my wife, but it was just, I just go through the motions every day.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because obviously, like, I was showing you, I've been taking these, like, herbal supplements as well. And the first thing that I noticed was a rise in an assertiveness came out of me again. And I was like, oh, I never realized I lost that. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I was talking to you about, like, my blood tests and things like that I completely botched, by the way, guys. Fucked it up. But it's interesting, like, because I've read a lot into testosterone, and I've read a lot what it does. I mean, men will know a little bit, but not enough to say that, you know, they've noticed that they're not as assertive as they once were. They don't stand up for themselves enough. They're not pushing themselves as much as they once did. And like you said, they can put it down to age or stress or whatever, but unless you don't know what you don't know, which is... So how did it feel to get diagnosed with low testosterone? Because obviously there's a lot of ego involved for men when you hear the words low testosterone. So how did you feel in that moment when he said that to you?
honestly, all of that I went out the window, and I was just really pleased to have a diagnosis, because I'd had a couple of years of being told I was essentially crazy. Now, I think because I was a physiotherapist, it probably helped, because, I had joint pain. I knew that wasn't mechanical. I knew it wasn't a muscle. I knew it wasn't a ligament, a tendon. I could test all those things. It was what I was doing every day. So I knew there had to be more to it. So when they said I had low testosterone, I was just like, great, what do we do? And he started me on a cream, which actually changed things probably within sort of 6 weeks.
Okay.
I started to feel completely different.
Where do you put this cream?
So I put it on either the back of my knee or on my forearm.
Okay.
Since then, with everything that I know, I do know now, and we prescribe it, a cream applied directly onto your scrotum can be really, really helpful. So if a man's symptoms are more libido, low mood, anxiety, apathy, they'll respond really well to testicular cream. If the symptoms are more physical, so weight gain, loss of muscle mass, aching after the gym, generally they respond better to an injectable. That's completely anecdotal. I haven't seen any evidence for that. It's just what we've found over the last sort of four and a half years treating gentlemen here.
Is it when did TRT stop becoming something you could get? Because I obviously knew, from growing up with, I've got a great relationship with my mom, and she was very open about, getting on HRT or whatever. And that was something that women, for me growing up, that was just something that, women around my mom and whatnot took, But TRT seems to just have appeared all of a sudden in the last couple of years or so. So when was it actually available for men to take?
About 90 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the gentleman that first synthesized it, I was going to say invented it, but the first synthesized it, actually won the Nobel Prize for their contribution to sexual health.
I had no idea it was so long ago, man.
Absolutely ages ago. So it's super safe. This has been tested all over the place, forwards, backwards, left, right. It's got massive amounts of data to say this is, safe and effective. And yet, up until last year, there was still a warning on most of the bottles to say that it can cause health problems.
What kind of health problems were they warning about?
Stroke, heart attack, were the two big ones, and they were based on some really poor studies that were done decades ago. One of them, only 3 people entered the study. We know you need at least 10 to even have a half decent study.
Yeah.
One of those 3 people didn't finish the treatment. None of them had the testosterone checked at the start, only the end, and one of them only had 1 testicle.
Oh, okay. That's a great bunch to test from.
But that went down as the gold standard, and doctors all over the world would say, no, I can't give you testosterone because you're going to get prostate cancer or a heart attack.
Yeah. Wow, man. Because when you hear testosterone, to be on testosterone, people immediately think steroids, right?
They do.
And it's so for you, because obviously you're more knowledgeable in this than me, and I've wanted to talk about this for ages because I've never had anyone on who's known this much about it. So in terms of the difference between, say, your typical run-of-the-mill steroid and actually getting testosterone, what's the difference in the levels that you would expect?
So the first thing I guess is to explain is testosterone is a steroid. It is what we call the king steroid. It's the main one in a man's body that makes you feel the way that you do. It's influential in many of the systems within your body. And steroid only means derived from cholesterol.
Okay.
That's what it means. That's the definition of it. Derived from cholesterol. Now, what else is derived from cholesterol? Vitamin D. Vitamin D is a steroid. Most people don't realise that, but nobody goes around saying you shouldn't have vitamin D in your body. It's get outside, have more sunshine, you're going to feel better. So steroids themselves aren't bad. They've been vilified. The word shouldn't have been. Anabolic steroids are different. So these are non-naturally occurring compounds that can be used to increase muscle and increase the increased androgen receptors are within the body. So you get bigger, your throat, your voice gets deeper. You might become more masculinized. You sometimes see women that's taken a lot of testosterone and their jaw gets bigger.
Yeah.
They get a beard.
Those scary women that you see in the gym. Yeah. I've seen many of them. Yeah.
Exactly. So testosterone is a steroid. That's okay. You can be deficient in testosterone. You can't be deficient in Anavar. or
Yeah.
Trenbolone. No one's ever gone to the doctors and they've gone, oh, haven't got enough Trenbolone in your body.
Yeah.
You better give me some more. So that's the big difference, really.
So in terms of, because testosterone levels, we think obviously we can control to a degree with, healthy living, diet, everything like that. What sort of level does genetics play in it?
We're all different, for sure. And I think the probably the most important way to answer this question is to not focus on the number. It's easy to say, well, genetics, this person's got 20 and then NMOL, this one's got 40, this one's got 12. But it's not so much the number that we see in a blood test, but it's actually how sensitive that man is to androgens.
Okay.
So to explain that a little bit more, you could have identical twin brothers, so they're same in every way from the outside. Both of them might have 15 nmols of testosterone in their bloodstream. One of them could be on death's door, to be dramatic, but they've got low mood, they've got low libido, they've lost muscle, they've got every symptom known to man, feel awful, anxious, depressed. And the other one might feel absolutely fantastic, knocking sets out in the gym, his libido is exactly where he wants it to be, feels like he is, the alpha male, if you like, the best he can possibly be. And it's because one of them is using the testosterone better than the other one.
Okay.
They're more sensitive to it, so they use it more.
Nice.
So there's definitely differences.
Because obviously you have like free testosterone in your body as well, like the different, and it's something that binds them together. I don't know the full.
SHBG.
That's the one. Yeah. So those pills I was showing you before, those herbal ones, Tonkat Ali and Fedosia regressus, which it took me ages to learn the names of these things. But one of them I believe is to release your free testosterone naturally in your body, and the other one helps you produce more. And it's funny, I was scared when I first started taking them because I was like reading up everything about liver problems or anything like that could happen. So I was very careful with them. And obviously I've just turned 30 as well, so I'm not what most people would consider as someone that still should have a reasonable testosterone level. My only thing was I was struggling with like brain fog, and I noticed my mood sort of dipping as well, and I wasn't pushing as much in the gym. And one thing that was missing was effort no longer felt good. And I think with testosterone, one thing that from looking into it is testosterone makes effort feel good, right? So, and that's the one thing that was the change for me was I'm like doing things, excuse me, and pushing myself no longer feels good. It feels like kind of how you were saying when you were like trying to think through soup. I was pushing myself through like muddy waters constantly to do things that once felt pretty easy to do. But yeah, it's interesting. So actually, I want to talk a little bit about your business, because I know obviously you're a businessman as well. What were the business lessons that you took from Therapy Direct and all that sort of early days? What business lessons would you give to someone who's starting a business?
It's harder than people think it is. That I think the biggest thing someone could take away when they're getting into business is to double the time they think it's going to take to be successful. To all entrepreneurs, I would say, are visionaries. To create something, to create this podcast, you have to have an idea, to begin with, and go down that route. And we all think it's going to be easier than it probably is. We all think, what was that film, Kevin Costner? Build it and they will come, Field of Dreams.
Okay, yeah.
I'll build a business and people will be flooding through the doors,
yes.
knocking me over to get in. That's not the case. So I think the biggest thing is about resilience and tenacity. What I do with all of our businesses is we set 90-day sprints rather than having a 12-month plan, and then reverse engineer what we should be doing every day. And you just have very, very simple daily non-negotiables. Because if you have to focus on a big goal, it can seem too much. And if you don't have a small enough, short enough window, there's no real pressure to push you forward. So we just set these daily non-negotiables that you do day in, day out, until eventually, we're all familiar with that saying, it takes a long time to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And it's those daily things that you do every day. I love the Kaizen approach, so this Japanese approach to life, which is you just have a tiny incremental step forward every day. And a great statistic is if you got just 1% better per day per year, in a year you'd be 37 times further ahead than you are today.
I'd take that percent. I'd take those odds.
Imagine 37 times. But if you just went, I can't be bothered to do anything today, and that day became a week, and that week became a year, after a year of getting 1% worse, you would be just 3% of who you are today.
Wow.
That compounding is massive. So business is harder than you think it's going to be. If you build it, they will not come. You've got to understand marketing. You've got to understand podcasts and getting yourself out there and talking to people. And finally have this Kaizen approach where you've got these tiny little things that you do every day that add up and add up and add up over time.
Nice, man. I love it. And obviously now you've moved into Alphagenix now. So tell me about because obviously what was the gap between you initially getting your TRT diagnosis and then starting your own company basically on TRT? So
there's quite a long. I was on TRT for about 7 or 8 years before we started Alphagenix. And what happened is that I was very, very happy with the first doctor that I had, Dr. Willis. He changed my life without a doubt. He then retired, and he put me in touch with another doctor who I didn't get on with at all from day one. He just basically said, everything you were told was wrong. I'm going to do something different. I said, well, it's worked all right so far, so I'll go find somebody else.
You got to vibe with your doctor. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely, yeah.
I found another doctor that I did work really well with, but I just thought, I can do better than this. Like, because of our business, we were managing thousands of appointments all over the country every week. I thought, I can do this better in terms of the customer service. So I actually tried to buy his business. That was the first thing I did.
Fair, yeah.
And he said, no, not ready, don't want to. And I said, okay. And my friend of mine, he has a CQC business, so the Care Quality Commission, which means you can employ medical professionals. So I was playing golf with him one day, actually, in Spain, and I said, do you want to start a testosterone business? And he said,
How all great businesses start.
Yeah, exactly. And he said, I don't even know what that is. And I said, well, I've been taking TRT for like 8 years now. It's totally changed my life. I think it's going to become a lot more commonplace for people to talk about this. I've started to hear things on podcasts, here and there. I said, but, I've got an amazing doctor that I can put us in touch with. And we actually got Bernie, my doctor, out of retirement at the beginning to start us off. And he said, well, I believe in you. If you say you can do it, let's do it together. So we became 50-50 partners. He provided sort of the oversight from sort of the legal frameworks, from the regulatory frameworks, and I provided all of the knowledge and the customer sort of care side of it. And we created this package which didn't really exist at the time. So it was a totally end-to-end solution where a gentleman doesn't have to think. They can contact us. We'll send a nurse to their home, usually within 48 hours. 24 hours later, they have an appointment online with one of our doctors. And normally 24 hours after that, the medication's dropping through their door. So
nice.
They don't have to think. Even after that, we know when their testosterone is running low. So one of our account managers will call them, usually a couple of weeks before. Hey, Adam, I'm pretty sure your testosterone is running low now.
That's supposed to be a weird call to get,
yeah, because obviously we know exactly what dose someone's taken every week. So we know how much we've sent them, and we can call them first and say, look, we know we're running low. Let's get another blood test booked in. Let's get you booked back in with the doctor. And importantly, everything is covered under the subscription. So there is no point, where any of our gentlemen are thinking, how much is this going to cost me this month? Because when I first did it, I had to go all the way to London to see the doctor, because it had to be an in-person event. To had to get there, so that was all the travel costs associated with that. The consultation cost money, the blood test cost money. I then had to pay for the medication. I then had to pay for all of the paraphernalia, like the needles, the alcohol wipes, the sharps boxes. And then there was nothing for a couple of months. And then all of a sudden I have to have another blood test. And it was just really lumpy. Some months I was spending £700.
It just draws the process out as well.
It did. And then I wouldn't pay anything for a month. So I wanted to create something where a man knew exactly how much he was paying every single month, and it was just easy, and that's what we did.
Because men like it simple. We like it
We do.
direct and to the point. Like, I'll give you this money, you give me this.
We are very simple creatures.
Exactly.
Very simple creatures. It does take a lot to keep us happy. Yeah.
As much as some women might think men are impossible to please, we are very simple to please.
We really are.
In terms of the type of men, because obviously you built up quite a client base with Alphagenix now, what type of men would you say, what type of demographic would you say that you see that are struggling with this low testosterone the most? What are the patterns that you're seeing in these men?
Yeah, so there's three people I say we see. One is the person that I was. So it's this kind of early to middle-aged gentleman, usually a business owner or a C-suite executive. They're pretty busy, so they put down a lot of their symptoms to being busy.
Yes.
And eventually they turn to testosterone as the possibility of why they're feeling that way. The second person is the biohacker of the world.
Okay.
So it's kind of the person I've become, I would say.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys...
Have you taken as far as Brian Johnson yet? Or?
not quite, but you should see my cupboard full of supplements. I take 25 supplements every day.
Wow.
I take a variety of medications, including rapamycin, which is... We'll have to talk about that in a moment. That's a fascinating molecule. So you've got the biohackers, and most people that start on testosterone will eventually end up there because you feel so much better when your testosterone is optimal.
Yeah.
If you've then got optimal thyroid function, you feel like a superhuman.
Yeah.
So any changes after that are going to be really small. So, you might do red light therapy, cold immersion, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, take Fidogia or Tonka Ali, all these things. But you're only ever going to get then, an extra 0.5%. Or
it's just going to be a slight increase. Yeah.
So you've got the sort of the middle-aged person that doesn't know why they're well. They're just trying to get better. You've got the biohackers that just want to be even better still. And the third group are the people who've self-medicated. So the gentlemen who've used steroids in the past. And when I started this, probably had this preconceived notion of what that person would be like.
Yeah.
And I was wrong. Every single conversation I've had over the years with gentlemen who've used anabolic steroids, performance-enhancing drugs, it started very similar, those two, I was smaller than average when I was young. So I went to the gym to try and beef up a little bit. And a guy at the back said, well, if you really want to get big, just take this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're into this cycle, and often they will do that for maybe a decade or more until they see one of their friends die or become really unwell. Liver problems, heart problems. And it makes them reevaluate. And that's potentially the first time they've even researched it to find out whether these things are good for us or not.
Yeah.
And then they'll call. And they'll call Alphagenix and say... Hi, my friend's taking steroids and just wondered whether that's something that you could maybe help with. And we say, yeah, tell your friend we don't mind if people take steroids, that's fine. We can help them wean off and stop. Or, if you've already stopped and you want to get back to normal, we can help with TRT. And they go, oh, okay, it's me.
Yeah, because I can imagine, because obviously it's like if you stop taking steroids, the dramatic change in your body would be... Like you'd feel like a different person. You'd definitely lose your weight. But obviously, if you come down onto TRT, it's less of a dramatic fall, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have to see your testosterone drop to a certain level so that we can legally prescribe it. So we would normally ask you to come off for a certain period, but that doesn't have to be awful. We can manage that a little bit.
Yeah, because you said something earlier, and it is in my questions as well. Because the idea that there's a normal testosterone level for a guy of a certain age, but you don't think that a normal level is obviously good enough. And I would probably, based on what I've heard and what I've read, I would happen to agree. So where does it come from in terms of why is it seen as normal, and why do you disagree with that sort of diagnosis there?
So that's a great question. And actually, normal in biochemistry, everyone have seen like a bell curve before on data sets.
Yeah.
Well, normal is just that bit in the middle. It's the 50% sort of the population. So over time, what happens is people do loads and loads of blood tests of every sort of biomarker that's out there, and they take the mean, they take the middle bit to be normal, as in that's what is the average in the population right now.
Yeah.
Problem is we know that testosterone has halved in the last 50 years. So all that's happened over 50 years is we've just moved the goalpost every year, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower. So now what we accept as normal would have been, in your boots on the floor, you need help 50, 60 years ago. But we just keep moving it. And it's because, of course, as a species, we're generally becoming more unhealthy. We're supposed to be the most technologically advanced we've ever been, and yet chronic disease is up. Weight is up, all-cause mortality going up. So something's not right at the moment. But what's happened is this idea of normal has just got lower and lower and lower. So we don't want men to be normal. We want them to be optimal. Now, an optimal is a very different range. That's up in that top sort of 5%, 10% when you're looking at the numbers. But the other thing to then consider as well is, what is the number? What does it represent? And how is that interpreted by the body? And we sort of said earlier that it's not so much how high it is, but how sensitive you are to it. So if you think about the number of testosterone, or thyroid's a good example. So let's say testosterone, we believe, is 20 is a an optimal level. Anything above 20 is good. Well, at 20.1 are you fine, but at 19.9 you're not. So it's a sliding scale. Everybody's different. My testosterone now sits up in sort of the low 30s. We have some gentlemen it's up in the 40s. Some feel great at 15. We're all different, but what we look to do is listen to the gentleman's symptoms, combine that with what we see in the blood test, and then make a clinical decision on where that person should be.
Nice, man. It is interesting because, like you said, we are noticing the decline in men's natural testosterone rates, and a lot of it is diet. But do you think any of it's to do with just the sheer amount of comfort that we have now? Like, we are not the predators we once were, I guess you could say. Because I think for me, obviously, I go to the gym and stuff like that. I can't imagine how I would feel if I didn't. And I know the gym is more common. More people apparently are now choosing to get up for a gym class than they are to go clubbing, which is an interesting statistic now. And I love that because I'm I've had my clubbing days. I think everyone has, but to actually get up and do something, to put yourself through something hard, the fact that we're choosing that more means, I think, as a society, we're becoming more aware of the fact that we have to do something. Otherwise, we're going to feel terrible just normally. So it is something. And another thing that I've been looking at as well is the whole porn side of things, the whole erectile dysfunction side of things, because they're also tied with your testosterone, libido, things like that. So how often do things like porn addiction or erectile dysfunction, do they come into play with your clients and things like that?
Yeah, porn addiction not so much. I'm sure it's a problem that some of the gentlemen I work with have. ED more so. I think probably because that's more that's a physical manifestation of what can be linked to hormones, whereas the porn addiction probably sits more in sort of the psychology side of things, which we don't have any psychologists to work with us.
Right, got it.
But ED, we have a lot of gentlemen that come to us with that. Just because you have low testosterone doesn't mean you have ED. I think that's an important distinction, because a lot of men say, I can't have low testosterone because my libido's fine, and my dick gets hard in the morning, and some of them are, I'm absolutely fine.
Yeah.
It's not mutually exclusive. You can have ED and have low testosterone, and vice versa. So yeah, ED is massive. Porn addiction we don't get into as much. I do think there's been a number of reasons for this. The world has changed, over the last 50 years, and you could say that a big part of that is the amount of toxins that we're exposed to now. BPA's in plastic, we know, is an endocrine disrupting chemical, so it sort of mimics estrogen in a man, which then obviously makes you drives your testosterone down. There's a lot of pesticides that get sprayed onto food, which again disrupt the chemicals and can lower testosterone. Equally, though, we are more sedentary, as you said.
Yes.
So if you're not active, you are going to produce less testosterone. You produce testosterone lifting in the gym. Therefore, we also used to produce testosterone when we were hard working in the fields or in foundries and things like that. Whereas most of us now sit behind a desk all day.
Yeah.
The hardest thing we do is get up and go and make a coffee.
It's like, well, your body produces what you need based on what you're doing
Yeah.
in a roundabout way. So it's like, are we surprised that when we're being sat down all day, that our body's not producing the hormones it needs to go and, kill tigers or whatever the hell it was we used to do? Do you know what I mean? It's not producing that anymore. Like, have you seen, is it Wall-E, the cartoon?
I have, yeah.
Have you seen it? Do you know what I'm going to do? When they're all...
In space.
They're all sat on they're all got them screens around them, they're all sat on them movable chairs and that all really far. And I'm like, that's where we're going. That's exactly where we're headed. Yeah.
I think the other thing that's probably worth noting as well is that there's also been a really big shift in the family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we go back again 50, 60 years, the family unit was quite different. So, the mum perhaps stayed at home in a more traditional role. The guy would go out to work, but they would often take the son with them and show them what it was like to go to work and work hard.
Yeah.
But now both parents typically go to work because everything's more expensive. And women and men rightly are equal, so they can do that. We're not the same, but we're equal.
Agreed.
So that's an important thing, I think. But what happens is the children then generally get sort of pushed off into some sort of pre-nursery or nursery, and they're raised by generally women. So you've got young men, boys, being told to stop climbing up trees, stop jumping off things, stop wrestling, and just sit down and do your painting and things like that. So it's changed a lot, and these roles, I think, are an important thing to bear in mind.
Because we, as men, we want to do risky shit, especially as kids.
It's in us.
Like, I remember I jumped off a shed roof and landed on a tree root when I was a kid. Like, I would never do that now, but like as a kid, the guys were always told to calm down, settle down, do this, like. Do you know what I mean? But we were also, I remember, I think I was probably the last generation to be encouraged to be outside, to actually climb trees. I was never told not to climb trees, for example. I was always encouraged to explore, and I'm grateful for that, and I think it's benefited my adult life. But I think you are right. I mean, I don't have kids yet, and I'm excited, but also scared to actually have kids, because I'm like, am I going to be trying to raise them a lot differently to what society's telling me to do at the minute?
Well, men often had a rite of passage.
Yeah.
In a lot of indigenous tribes around the world, that still happens. And, you get to a certain age, 13, 14, 15, and you have to go and do something really hard.
Yeah.
Kill a tiger or, climb a certain route on a mountain or whatever it might be. And doing those hard things helps shape us, but certainly it helps with hormones as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm not going to go too deep into how you raise your kids and stuff. I know you've got a 15-year-old son, so he's kind of that puberty age where things are all over the place and stuff, but like, I'd love the idea of because I've trained for 10 years, I want to say, in the gym. Now, I'm not a bodybuilder. I don't train extremes, I do it because I want to look a little bit better and I want to feel good about myself. But I also can imagine myself as a dad. I really want my son or daughter to do that from quite an early age, I guess, get a head start on things, because I know the benefits. But I feel like a lot of kids now are sort of pushed to maybe not do that as much and not look after themselves, but also the lead by example thing. So actually, I am going to ask you about that. Do you think about that in your daily life? Are you leading by example for your kids?
Yeah, 100%. I've always been someone to push myself, and a great example is one of the ways I've always found to exert myself is through mountaineering. So I've climbed high things all over the world on most continents, not been to Antarctica yet. And mountaineering is a really selfish sport. You can die.
Yeah.
And people do all the time.
Yeah.
I've fallen down a crevasse. I've been blown off the side of a mountain. All sorts of things have happened over the years. But when I first met my wife, almost 23 years ago, we were talking about this, and she said, do you have to do this, or do you, or do you need to do it?
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great question.
Yeah.
I said, I need to do it. I think we are on this earth to push ourselves and be the best version of ourselves. And who am I as a husband, as a dad, if I'm not being my best self? I want to be the best version of me, and I want to show my children that they can do anything. So absolutely, that's really important to me. I talk about it with our kids, and my son now, as you know a little bit about this, but I was flown off a mountain 10 months ago now, at short breath, and I've been now 10 months without mountaineering and been quite unwell.
Yeah.
My 15-year-old son now is pretty much benching more than me because Rich
no.
is incredible.
Yeah.
So we're going off to play golf next week together.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to spending time with him there. But yeah, he's got that in him now as well, and he looks amazing. He's in the gym every day. I'm super proud of him.
Nice, man. I love that. And one of the things I did have on my list here, going back to the whole the porn side of things, because I think it might not be something that comes up in your clinic, but it's definitely something that's affecting men's health. And I've very much been a believer in getting rid of that side of life for many, many years now. And one of the things I've looked at is apparently because of the testosterone side of things led me to look more into male confidence side of things, especially with relationships and things like that. And one thing that I found really interesting was about the psychology side of how porn works on the brain. So a lot of these guys are reporting, apparently there's I think it's 35% of men under the age of I can't remember, I think it's like 25, 35% of them are now reporting very few sexual partners. The actual amount of young people having sex is going down. Yeah. And people are saying, well, is it the testosterone thing, which is one side of things, is the testosterone being affected that way? But also the porn side of things was your brain can't differentiate between the woman on the screen and the women you're meeting in real life. And for any men out there who have watched porn, there's a very slim chance you've seen someone that looks like a porn star in your daily life, right? So the idea was that you're seeing this on the screen, and that's what your brain thinks is attainable for you as a guy. And then when you're going out there, you're having issues with women because your brain's going, well, hang on, the other day we were with this 10 out of 10. And it doesn't compute, And I'm always interested in the psychology behind a lot of men's issues that are going on, because I feel like although we're having a conversation about it now and there's more talk about it than ever, it's still kind of a stigma to be able to talk about these things that men are going through. There's a lot of women's circles where they do talk about, women are much better at communicating than we are. But how do you think we get out of this cultural sort of stigma? What do you think we need to do more of as a society for men?
That's a really good question. And I think there's another element to what we were just talking about there, because I would argue that being a man is hard.
Yeah.
Harder than being a woman, because it's on you normally to instigate things.
Yes.
So a man is normally the one that goes up to a woman and says, do you want to go out for a drink? Now, when me and you did that decades ago, nobody was there with a smartphone taking a video. Now there is. So I think a lot of men don't want to put themselves out there now for fear that they're going to be videoed and put online.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And their humiliation is then not just one woman saying, no, I'm really sorry, you're not my type. It's all of a sudden, this could go viral. And millions of people could laugh at me. Mm-hmm. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons why that statistic you said at the beginning has happened, and why men are becoming more and more withdrawn. I do think it's something that needs to be tackled. I have seen there are some sort of clubs around the world now where you have to leave your phone, so you get put in a locked box.
Good, yeah.
And you're not allowed in with it. And I think,
how do you get a girl's number then? How does that work? You got to write it on your hand and
write it down
yeah.
in lipstick.
Yeah, on a napkin and that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think things like that are really useful. Mm-hmm. And I do think as well, you mentioned about women's circles and sharing, and there are more and more movements now within sort of the men's world as well, where guys can get together and talk openly about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big one for me.
It's interesting what you say about clubs, because I heard this the other day and I thought it was a fantastic and slightly worrying way to see things, but it was something about how for sex to happen, for men it's strategic, for women it's organic. Because a woman is just going along with it, they've met the guy, they're going on this date, they've been invited to this restaurant or whatever, then they're getting moved along organically, right? But for men, it's okay, I've got to go at this time. How am I going to do this to this and move this to this? And what am I going to say to... Do you know what I mean? That level of things makes it sound manipulative, but for most men, that's how they will see these relationships as a strategic way. Whereas for women, it's a lot more organic and happens naturally. But for men, what you were saying about the whole, approach anxiety, so we call it, going up to a woman is quite scary for men. Apparently, the reason more men have that is because... and we, as men, fear rejection more, is because when we had our little tribes and things like that, there was only maybe 10, 15 women that we would have a chance with. And people talk in small tribes, you know. So if you messed up that chance, there was a very slim chance that you would actually be able to, you know, get a mate and reproduce, which is, you know, the whole biological drive that we have. So I'm a big evolutionary psychology guy. I love that side of things, but I found that really interesting nowadays that men really do struggle to brush up that conversation.
Yeah. I think as well, you could also switch the word you just used. You use strategic and organic. You could switch that to logical and emotional. You know, men like solving problems.
Yeah.
You know, we hear this all the time when ladies say, you know, I just want you to listen to me. And you know, yeah, but you've shown me a problem.
I need to fix it. Yeah,
I know the answer. Like, if you do this, this, and this, you're not going to feel that way.
Yeah,
and it comes from a place of love, but it is received like that because obviously they just want to maybe spout and or vent.
Yeah.
But it's that emotional versus a logical response.
Definitely, I love that, man. But going back to, I actually want to talk about something that I saw in your book and things like that. So there was the stories that you've told about low testosterone and things like that. Has there ever been a story of a man who's come your way who there's a story that really resonates with you that you remember that you're like, damn, this story hit me hard?
Yeah, one in particular. So one person, actually local. So I won't say too much.
We don't have to name names. That's fine.
I won't name names, but yeah, this person was local, so I went to meet them in person, and they had just come out of a messy divorce, and the reason they were getting divorced is because he had ED, but he hadn't told his wife.
Okay.
So what happened, and this was a you know kind of the biggest story of this I've heard, but I've heard smaller stories or similar things often. He'd started suffering with ED, which he put down to lifestyle, diet. He was a high flyer, great job, really senior, you know, earning tons of money. From the outside world, everything looked like it was successful and everything was great. And then he started getting ED. When his wife then would come, you know, upstairs and say, hey, shall we, you know,
dance with no pants?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go. He'd be like, oh, I've had a busy day, or I've got a bit of a headache. And after a few months, his wife started to think he was having an affair. Because constantly being rejected by your husband is, which normally we think of it the other way around.
Yeah.
And she thought he's having an affair. She confronted him, and he didn't deny it because that was better than admitting he had erectile dysfunction.
Wow.
Because there's so much psychology, you know, involved with our penises and how they work.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to admit he had ED. He would rather let his wife believe he was having an affair.
Wow.
They got divorced. This was all before I met him. He then met a new lady that he was getting married to. And I met him, and he was in floods of tears because it was his wedding day coming up. And he didn't think he was going to be able to perform on his wedding day. And all of this had happened because he wasn't open to talk about it with his wife. But that was the biggest thing. That's been probably the most difficult story I've listened to. Yeah. And been sort of witness to sort of over the 4 years we've been helping guys.
And what was his issues, as well as psychological, was it to do with testosterone as well? Was he quite low on that? Or
He was low in that, yeah, so we optimised that. ED is a really complex area of medicine. Only about 30% of it or 30% of sufferers will respond to hormone treatment. You've also got to think about the psychological problems that maybe go back a long way to childhood, or even to some of the issues that are happening during the marriage. Yeah. And then also what a lot of people don't consider is you've also got to think about opportunity. Opportunity is really, really important when you think about libido, and this is really important when people first have children. And all of a sudden, there's a third person in the relationship. Maybe they're sleeping in between you for the first the first few months, and then they're awake all hours, and that disrupts your sleep and your partner's sleep. And all of a sudden, you know, one or both of the couple might think, well, we haven't had sex for a while. You know, is there something wrong? You know, what's going on? But it's just there's not as much opportunity. So it's a really complex area. About 30% will respond to hormone treatment. So if anyone has low libido, it's certainly worth considering an ED.
No, I love that, man. And well, I don't love that, but I love that you spoke about that. But there's actually something that I've been looking at, and it shocked me to put these few things together. So the average age of men's testosterone tends to drop off is also correlated with the average age of men who start to commit suicide. But it's also the age that men tend to get divorced as well. So these three things all sort of intertwine together. Like the low testosterone leads to low mood, leads to suicidal tendencies, leads to divorce and things like that. So it's like, would you say that would you agree with that sort of correlation or?
Yeah, and I've heard it taken a step further than that. So there's 3 times during a man's life when they're likely to be more suicidal, and they're all linked to hormones. So one is when your hormones are first spiking. So it's during puberty, early adolescence, early adulthood. Then it's middle age when your hormones start to deflate and go down.
Yeah.
And then it's so that's sort of around 40 typically. And then it's when the hormones get even lower to the point where they're almost imperceptible, in the early 60s. So it's that kind of late teens, around 40, early 60s, tend to be the 3 times when a man's most susceptible to it.
Interesting. I remember seeing something about, there's a guy that I listened to on a podcast. He's 48 years old and he's been on TRT for like 5 years or something like that. And this guy's like lives in Vegas and stuff like that. So he lives the high life and stuff like that. Very rich, very successful. And he's like dating like 21, 22-year-olds. And he says there's a reason TRT's not pushed in mainstream. It's like you can't have all these 45-year-old successful men going with all the 20-year-old women, But I thought that was really funny. But with TRT, is there any harmful side effects, and what do people need to be aware of? Like if they were going to go and get it, because obviously we've talked about the benefits of it. Is there any side effects that people need to be aware of?
There are, but they're not great. They're not big side effects, I'd say, when you do it properly.
Right. Is
what I would just caveat that with. So if you're on medically supervised treatment, so you're using the minimum viable dose to get the maximum amount of effect, the symptoms are almost none. For instance, we've been doing this for 4.5 years. We've only ever had one man that had acne. One. In 4.5 years. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, you're going to get acne." You're gonna
because on steroids you get like acne, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. But that's not the case if you're using a low minimum viable dose of testosterone and microdosing it. The big one, I would say, is to do with fertility. And one of the questions we ask when a gentleman comes to us is, have you had all your children? Because testosterone isn't a contraceptive. It's just not. I had my children when I was taking TRT. So it doesn't guarantee to reduce your fertility, but in about 60% of men it will lower it. So
by a significant amount, or just
by a significant amount?
Right.
Yeah. So what we'll say is, if you still want to have children, you've got a couple of options. 1, don't start TRT. 2, you could take HCG as well, which increases the production of your testosterone, even though you're taking synthetic testosterone as well.
Got it.
And the third thing you can do, and this is for generally the gentlemen who are really feeling bad, is they can freeze their sperm and put them aside for a later date. So that's the most important one, I would say, is it can affect fertility. Up until very recently, some doctors would say it would cause prostate cancer, heart attack or stroke.
Yeah.
We now know that's not true. We would treat a man with prostate cancer with testosterone if it was low. He's going to feel bad enough anyway with prostate cancer, so why do we want to deprive him of the hormone
give him a helping hand. Yeah, exactly, yeah. No, man, I like it. But in terms of, for you actually, because I mentioned at the start you do a lot of journaling, meditation, and you've looked into these things as well, so you've kind of got that more medical level, but also like a sort of spiritual level, I would say, to it. So a lot of men turn their noses up at it, but how has that sort of side of things helped you, like meditation, journaling? How has that sort of helped your mental health?
Hugely, and that's been something that I've probably been doing since my early 20s. So I think having that sort of more grounded understanding of who you are and where we fit in this huge universe, I think definitely helps. And that was always my conviction. And actually, about a year ago, two years ago, a study came out that showed belief in a higher power can improve hormonal health.
Okay.
And the link was that believing in a higher power improves mental health, and mental health improves physical health. physical outcomes.
Okay.
So belief in
God
whatever you call
God
it.
equals higher testosterone. Yeah,
Kind
I like
of.
it.
Yeah,
I like
you
it,
know,
yeah.
whether you call it God, the Matrix, the Source, the Universe, it doesn't matter. Whatever
Nice.
floats your boat is basically going to, it means you can lift more in the gym and you have higher testosterone.
You heard it here first, folks. God helps you lift more in the gym. I love that. No, I kind of like that though, because it's like faith in having faith in something external gives you a little bit of, I don't want to say a safety net, but it kind of is in a way. It's a little bit of reassurance, I guess you could say. Yeah. I like that. But in terms of where most men are going wrong with these health trends, because obviously we talked about Brian Johnson briefly. For those who don't know, Brian Johnson is, isn't Brian Johnson the singer of like a AC/DC or something? I don't know. But also there's Brian Johnson he's trying to basically age backwards, like end aging, isn't he? And he does all these things. His entire day is spent trying to de-age himself, right? But we get all these health trends online, like ice baths, like saunas. Obviously, we talk about the gym, things like that. There's always something new, like a new trend. Like, where do you draw the line between useful science and just chasing health trends?
I think you've just got to do what feels right for you. I do take a lot of supplements, and I've had conversations with, my wife and my friends and all sorts of people about what I take and why. And I would say, look, worst case scenario is this is doing nothing. Best case scenario, it is helping me in my older years. So if you've got the money to spend on it, because it can get expensive.
Oh yeah.
Then you're not doing yourself any harm, I would say. And perhaps even through the placebo, you might even be actually helping yourself.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you're not harming anybody, knock yourself out. Don't become one of those people that then are shouting at everyone if you're not getting up at 5 o'clock and doing a nice bath.
I ain't getting up at 5 and doing a nice bath. No, I'm getting up at 8 and I'm having a nice hot shower. That's what I'm doing.
And a coffee.
Yes, exactly. Black coffee, love it. What was you mentioned something before.
Rapamycin.
Yes, tell me about that.
Yeah, so most of the things that are out there, whether it's sauna, cold immersion, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, supplementation, we're looking to really slow deterioration, slow aging. A lot of the peptides that are out there, which of course is a huge area and topic as well, can look to slow things down. None of them really reverse it. Now we have seen some really interesting results with psychedelics. So particularly psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and 5-MeO-DMT. They've been shown actually to really slow things down from an aging perspective, and even increase increase longevity by up to 30%. But the one that's got the most research behind it, and it's in human trials at the moment, is something called rapamycin. Now, rapamycin is something that comes from Rapa Nui, or the actual, or the more common term, Easter Island.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm not going to pretend to know where that is. Yeah.
So Easter Island, the indigenous name is Rapa Nui.
Okay.
When our scientists were going over there and collecting data, they noticed that the local indigenous people didn't have any infections in their feet.
Okay.
But most indigenous tribes that don't wear shoes have infections. And they started to puzzle why it was, and they found something in the soil, like an antibiotic, which they ultimately traced back, I think, to the base of an extinct volcano or something crazy, and they called it rapamycin. Now, this has then been used and synthesized and placed into a drug, which is given to people when they have an organ transplant, and it's completely legal to do so. That is the evidence. Someone has an organ transplant, give them rapamycin, it stops it being rejected.
Yeah.
But what people started to notice is that had an effect on longevity of the cells around there as well.
Okay.
Now, if we take it a step further, the reason we age is because of the telomeres on the end of our chromosomes. Now, for anyone listening, if they don't know what that is, think telomeres are like the little plastic things on the end of your shoelaces.
That's a good way to look at it, yeah.
They're on the end of your chromosome, and every time your cell doubles, that degrades a little bit, and every time as it degrades more, we age. Rapamycin is thought to reverse that telomere shortening, which then means that we can live longer. So personally, I'm aiming for 120.
Oh, okay, nice. I always said I wouldn't want to live. I mean, I don't know what extent your quality of life would be at 120. Like,
Yeah, a health span is just as important as lifespan. So
because if you were 120, you couldn't move, and you were just like, I'm in so much pain, help me. You know what I mean?
That's no good. As long as I can still get up, we could go walking,
Yeah.
enjoy time with my loved ones. Here's a good question for you then: would you like to be immortal?
Can I stay? Like, am I just constantly aging to the point where I'd eventually be a living skeleton, or am I like,
No,
do I just
you would
stop at a certain?
now.
Yeah, I would. I think that would be cool. Yeah, I
Me
think
too.
as long as I don't like turn into this withered skeleton and I'm just living like, you know, like almost like a curse, like I'm doomed to live forever in this horrible frail body.
Yeah.
But no, I would love to be immortal. Yeah, I think it'd be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see what we do. You know, in the last 100 years, we've changed so much as a species. Where are we going to be in 200 years, 500 years?
The only thing that'd be
1,000
sad
years?
though is watching all your loved ones pass. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, but do you think you would just continue having families every like? Do you know what I mean?
so.
Just like,
Yeah.
would you Genghis Khan the shit out of the world? Like, would you just have like thousands of children as well? Like,
I think you probably would, you know, because you probably would mourn, wouldn't you, for a certain period, just like if, heaven forbid, something does happen to your loved ones here.
yeah.
But then after maybe 100 years or 200 years, you'd be ready again, have another family, and then it would repeat.
Could you end your existence? Could you tap out any time, or are you like
I don't know.
on this theory? You brought the theoretical. Can you just, you know, if you got bored of life,
I don't think so. No, I think that would be who you are. Yeah.
you're immortal forever?
Yeah.
I'd 100% have a god complex by the end of it. Like, I would be like, I'd just dominate the world. You know, if you couldn't die, you know what I mean? You'd become a tyrant, wouldn't you? Where do you think most men are going wrong with their health? Because obviously, like, for someone that he has these symptoms that we were talking about, like brain fog, like aches, pains, issues in bedroom, whatever, where do they start with the basics before jumping to maybe something like TRT? What are the basics that you would recommend a man do? So say he's listening right now, he's like, I've got a few of these, but I don't know whether I'm ready for TRT. Where does someone start?
So the basics are really the best place to start. And the basics are eat right, sleep right, protect your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you are not consuming lots of processed food, if you're getting 6, 7, 8 hours sleep, a lot of people are like, you've got to get 8 hours a night. Like, I think we're all different. I don't think I've ever had 8 hours for most of my adult life, and that's okay.
I had about 7.5 because I forgot the clocks went and changed
Right,
last
okay.
night.
But I think, quality sleep, and what I mean by that is really going to bed at the same time every day,
Yeah.
getting out of bed at the same day. So you
It's
get
that
into this-
inconsistency that fucks people up, isn't it? Yeah.
Definitely. And there's lots of research to show, gentlemen men and women who work night shifts live something crazy like 3 years less. It's quite a significant difference because of that inconsistency.
Mm-hmm.
So eat right, get into some sort of routine with your sleep, and protect your mental health, whether that's journaling, whether it's talking with your friends, whether it's going to some sort of men's circle or whatever.
Yeah, we've
it
got
might
Andy's
be.
Man Club and stuff now. It's a big one, yeah.
Exactly. So they're I think the really big ones. And if you are, sleeping right, eating right, exercising regularly, and protecting your mental health, there's not a lot that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, and what we see, is that this has often been coming on for such a long time, and you get 1% worse every year.
Yeah.
That by the time a guy feels absolutely awful, it's been years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
So you might find that you might not be able to go to the gym.
Yeah.
You might just feel too bad. And, even the hassle of cooking some really lovely, healthy, fresh food, it's easier just to stop on the way home from work and grab a burger or grab a pizza. So sometimes you do need help to break the cycle, and that's where TRT can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But we would always advise someone to go down a natural route first if they can.
But also do it alongside TRT as well, because it's not going to hurt you, is it? You can't. It's like me and my boss, Luke, we talk about these new weight loss jabs all the time and things like that, and we talk about the difference between getting one through the NHS or whatever, and then getting one through private. So private, for example, they will basically just give you it and leave you to it, right? But on the NHS and stuff, you have to send them data. You have to say, I am working out. This is my food. Yeah. Otherwise, they stop it. And it's like that should be. I don't know whether that's the same with TRT. Like, how do you give it to someone? Like, do they have to be like exercising and looking after themselves as well, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we want someone to be fully on board. You could give someone testosterone and they would feel better.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're still sitting on the sofa every night eating pizza, followed by donuts, not doing any exercise, gaming until 2 a.m, you know. And
Okay, I'm guilty of that one, but okay, the rest I was fine with. Yeah.
Then they're gonna still feel bad.
Yeah.
Not as bad as they did, but they're still gonna feel bad.
Yeah.
So we do encourage people, to start looking at their food, tracking maybe their macros, journaling, which sometimes is the one that comes in a little later.
Yeah.
And when they start doing that, that's when TRT sort of accelerates, and you just get better and better and better. And that's when someone goes from, as I said earlier, the person I was to the person I am. Where, how can I get 1% better? How can I get 0.5% better? Can I microdose retatrutide? Is that going to make a difference? Or shall I start using peptides or some of these other nootropics that are out there to improve brain health?
Nice, man. In terms of the mental health side of things, the men's role models today, like, obviously, what qualities? Obviously, we have people online. I'm assuming I know you're on Instagram and things like that. You must see some of these other guys who are maybe in similar positions to you, run a business or talk about testosterone or whatever else, the alpha male gurus, right?
Yeah.
What traits of them do you admire, and what sort of things have you seen that might be misleading or actually damaging and unhelpful?
Damaging and helpful, if we tackle that first, I would say is a lot of people are talking about sport TRT, and they'll often do these quotation marks in the sky. Sport TRT is just taking steroids.
Got it.
And you see some people online, they're absolutely jacked. Their shoulders are like footballs, and they're like, "I'm just taking sport TRT," and you're like, "You're not. You're taking steroids."
Yeah.
Like, there's no way.
It's just a nice name. It's just like, I'm taking TRT.
Yeah. You're just taking a really high amount of TRT.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. So I think that's the most damaging thing. Is you've got men thinking that these higher levels are okay. But they're not. They're super physiological. You're going above even what was normal 50 years ago, and that's going to have a negative effect on the body over time. So that's probably the most damaging. I think probably one of the really positive things, though, is the confidence element. And you mentioned it earlier. I think when you see a man who's confident in his own skin, and he's putting himself out there, talking about, whether it's his job or his passion or whatever it might be, that confidence, I think, is what a lot of young men now lack.
Yeah.
And I think any way that we can help the younger generations feel confident in their own skin, to be confident, as you say, to go and talk to someone that they admire.
Yeah.
It could be the same sex, it could be the opposite sex, but if they have that confidence to go and start a conversation, I think that's really, really important. And it is waning, as we talked about.
Yeah, and it's funny though, because like I've got a really good mate of mine, and I'll not name him, but me and him are basically like each other's therapist in a way. And it's one of the few relationships I've managed to build where it's kind of, we don't speak all the time, but if there's a problem, we openly talk about it, but in a way that's not like, it's comforting, but it's also like a slap in the face at the same time. Like if I'm going through something, I was like, mate, you've said this like 6 months ago, when are you going to sort this out? Like, I love you, but sort it out. And I think you are right though, men are missing that. Men are missing those people that they can talk to. They're just being bombarded with information, but they're not being able to talk about that information. It's like when you watch a film, right, and you have to talk about it afterwards to completely understand what you've just witnessed or whatever. You need that with the information that the internet's giving you about testosterone, being a real man, quote unquote. You know what I mean? All these things, you need someone who understands it from that level and can talk about it. Like, and it's important to have that friend. So, yeah, 100%.
It definitely is. I mean, there's some statistics again come out recently that showed something crazy, like 30 or 40% of young men now don't even have one friend.
Yeah.
And then there was a huge proportion that had one, and there was only a handful that had more than three. Whereas, again, if you go back 50, 60 years, guys went round in groups.
Yeah.
The Rat Pack. And things like that. You would have 6, 7, 8 mates, and you would all go out together and hang out together and play football together and go to the pub together or go wherever together. And that's just changed now. And it's a frightening statistic that, 30, 40% of men, don't even have one friend.
Yeah.
That one person they can speak to about a problem.
It's all, I know everyone says on every podcast, but I do blame social media for it. Like the distance it creates. We think it's connecting us, but it's pulling us further and further away from our friends. Because like I miss going to knock on my friend's door and being like, "Are you coming out?" Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Now it's just like I'll just text him or send him reels, and I'll be like, "I haven't had a conversation with this guy. I've just sent him memes for 2 weeks now. Like, I need to have a full conversation with this person." And it is missing. It's lacking, and it's sad to think, but it's one of those things that again you have to make an effort to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too comfortable and you're in that state of apathy, you're not going to start making plans with these friends. You're just going to get more and more distant, and it's a sad one. But where do you stand on the alpha male thing? There's a few books around us that are talk about alpha males and things that have the word alpha in the title. Where do you stand? Because obviously you must get that mentioned in the testosterone world. The word alpha must get thrown around in there. So where do you stand on this alpha male ideology?
Yeah, I mean, it's in our name, isn't it? We chose Alphagenix as the name, as just a strong, powerful name.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we wanted to convey, that, you can be a strong, powerful individual by reclaiming your health. But that doesn't mean you're the loudest. It doesn't mean you're the strongest. You don't have to have big muscles. You've just got to be secure in your own skin.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing for me. If you're to be an alpha male, you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to have huge muscles. You've just got to be confident in who you are. You've got to be healthy. You've got to know what your role is in life, and go after it. So that is generally to be, the provider, the protector for your family. And we've got these pretty old-fashioned, I can't think of the right word.
Like a narrative about it.
An old-fashioned sort of narrative, about, looking after your family and being the best version of yourself. So that's what it is for us, or for me.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think a lot of people get they think I've seen loads of people talking about whether alpha exists within the human world, whether it's just an animal thing, but it definitely is. It does exist in the human world, but in a very different format. So like we think of alphas in the wild as like the wolves that lead the pack, right? But like the alphas in human life, it's now people think it's like you said, the loudest, the biggest muscles, whatever, who's always dominating the scenario. But the way I look at it is like the alpha will always change based on a scenario. So for example, like say me and you are at an event, right? Me and you are talking, and then there's I don't know, let's say Paul Mort, for example. So it's me, you, and Paul Mort, right? We're all talking, we're all sort of equal, right? But then Paul gets on stage to speak. Who changes in the alpha male on that? Does that mean me and you are beta males and suck? It doesn't. It's a contextual thing. We listen to him. In that scenario, he's the alpha, but say he's a bit more quiet or whatever, your personality might take over. You become the alpha of that. It changes, you know what I mean? But trying to outdo everyone with dominance and being loud, it's not good leadership, and it's not being a true alpha male to be respected.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think as well, that's probably where you then get into this area of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Which personally I think is some of the worst, terminology that's ever been invented. To put the word toxic next to masculinity, I think is awful, because you've got young men that don't appreciate what that means, and they just think any type of masculinity is toxic.
Yeah,
and of course it's not. Confidence should be should be encouraged. We should be looking up to that. You want a certain level of aggression, even in a male, particularly if you were protecting your loved ones.
Yeah.
If you're going into a war. You need that level of ability to turn it on. So I think, we've got to be very, very careful. And also, if we're talking about toxic masculinity, what we should really call it is toxic traits.
Yes.
And those traits can be displayed by either gender. So, you could have a bully that's a lady or a guy.
Well, if you've got toxic masculinity, you've got to have toxic femininity, haven't you? You've
got nobody wants to say that.
You've got misogyny, you've got misandry as well, which, funnily enough, isn't talked about as much as misogyny is. But, I'm sure they have their reasons for mentioning either or. But it is interesting when we talk about, like, toxic masculinity. I mean, someone will probably correct me in the comments or whatever, but I'm fairly certain it came from psychologists in prisons. And it was about where, like, say you're in the lunch queue getting your lunch in prison or whatever, and someone stands on your toe, so you shank them. That was classed as toxic masculinity because it was an inappropriate response to that behavior. It wasn't just, oh, sorry, mate, I've stood on your toe, and they're like, that's all right, mate, just watch where you're standing. It's like, you're now dead because of this mistake. So I'm fairly certain that's where the term came from, but someone will probably correct me in it. But
well, if that is the case, and that's now in the mainstream, we shouldn't have been allowed.
Yeah, but it was things like, I believe toxic masculinity, they were saying things like stoicism or dominance or assertiveness were classed as that. It's like, well, what is the opposite to that? And it's like, you have overly emotional men, but I always say if you get overly emotional men, you get dangerous men, because a man who's not in control of his emotions is a dangerous man. It's like the difference of what people say they want versus what is actually useful for society and for people is very different.
Yeah. Well, we've had a number of we've on our podcast as well, the Alphagenix podcast. We've had a lot of men and women, doctors, health professionals, all sorts of people over the years, and we'll always ask the lady guests, would you rather have a man who walked on the outside of the pavement, who opened a door for you, who pulled a seat back, paid the bill, or do you want someone who's the opposite of all of that and is in floods of tears all the time?
Yeah.
Oh, it's obvious. I want the guy that's going to look after me.
Yeah.
Is going to pay the bill. He's going to open the door, and he's in control of his emotions. Perhaps more on the stoic side of things. And yet, on mainstream media, we're made out that it's the opposite way around.
It's the same with the dad bod scenario. It's like women saying they prefer dad bods. No, they don't.
Yeah, they don't.
No, they don't. They don't prefer dad bods. No. But have you seen the ones where it's like, this is what women think a dad bod looks like, and it's like some guy who's been in the gym for like 25 years versus what an actual dad bod is. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. But is there a belief about health or masculinity that 10 years ago that you held that now you think is completely different to what you thought it was?
No. I don't think so. I don't think it's changed in the last 10 years. I mean, I'm 49 this year, and I've been on TRT I think for almost 13 years. By the time it comes to my birthday, so I guess I've been on TRT for that whole time. I probably, if I think further back, if I think back to when I was a child, I probably do value exercise more now than I did, and whether that's just because I'm older, or whether it's because my testosterone has changed, whether it's because we live in a different world, I'm not sure. But I certainly do see a link between masculinity and exercise.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Physicality.
Absolutely, yeah. So tell me about the book that we have on the table. For those watching, this is Ross Tomkins' book that I have that is proudly displayed on our shelves as well. I just took it off for... So tell me about the decision to actually write a book about this as well. Not just run a business, but also write a book.
Yeah, so for me, it was just about sharing that story, sharing the highs and the lows. There are many men out there that don't know their testosterone is low. They don't know why they feel the way they do. They're sitting on the edge of this bed in the morning, just plucking up enough energy and courage to get up and go to work. And they think it's because there's something wrong with them. Maybe they're depressed, maybe they're anxious, and it can be fixed. It might be low testosterone. So I kind of just wanted to put myself out there a little bit, share a bit of my story, in the hope that even one or two people read that, and it helps them make a decision. And whether they find their way to us, Alphagenix, or whether they find another provider, I don't mind. A lot of men will choose to start themselves, as you said earlier, with maybe some supplementation, exercise, changes in diet, all of that. If we can help just a couple of extra people by writing a book, then I don't mind sharing my story.
Yeah, man. No, I love it. And obviously I think I picked this up, was it last September, maybe, like that? So a lot of but what I remember when I flicked through it, and I had a good solid read of this as well, was a lot of it is, I think, stuff that I needed to know that I wish I knew earlier, but also a lot of really good fucking reminders. Do you know, that's what I love the most about it, was it's like a handbook for like things that you might have forgot that you should be doing. And that's what I love the most about that, I think. So
thank you. Yeah, most of us know what we need to do, don't we? We know we shouldn't reach for that second cake or the third beer or whatever it might be, but we do it anyway. We kind of go, well, it'll probably be fine. So we know we should be doing things, but that doesn't necessarily mean we do it every time. Yeah,
exactly, man. I love that. Well, Mr. Ross Tomkins, I have one final question for you, and it's a question that I ask all the guests on my show, and the answers always surprise me. And the question is quite simply: do you consider yourself a success?
Ooh, get in there.
Okay. I can take that. Yeah.
Get in there. I've still got a long way to go. There are things that I want to do. There's places I want to travel. But I would say, yes, get in there.
Nice, man. I love that. Yeah, I would definitely say so as well. I think, obviously, hearing a little bit about your story today, and obviously being a businessman as well, is just constant stress, headaches, and things like that. But you're a very calm man. I like that. You don't see, because I've met many businessmen over the years, and some of them they seem like they're one little annoyance away from having a full-on breakdown. Whereas you come in calm, like, I love it. I think the success radiates off you, mate. I love that.
Thank you.
Where can people follow you? Where can people get involved with what you do?
The best place is honestly on LinkedIn. That's my most active platform.
Nice one,
we're about 32,000 followers. I'm posting on there every day about health, about business, all the things that I find sort of move me. So it's health, business, and freedom. This idea that you can live a life where you can travel with your loved ones as often as you like, and have a business that works for you. And not just when you're there. So LinkedIn, just my name, Ross Tomkins. You'll find me on there. I'm the guy with the hat.
The guy with the hat, yeah. I don't think I've ever seen you without a hat, actually, which is strange. What's under there? Is that just a testosterone thing? Yeah. Nice, man. Yeah. I think that might be the first time I've seen you with that hat, actually. Yeah. But I always tried the when I first started going bald, I tried the flat cap thing and it didn't really work out. I just looked really strange. But I think like for me as well, like the bald. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna add one else thing because I was always told that more testosterone makes you go bald. Is that true?
Yes and no. So
Okay.
it's not testosterone; it's actually dihydrotestosterone.
Okay.
So the more testosterone you have, technically, the more dihydrotestosterone you'll have, which is a derivative of it. However, that will only affect you if you have male pattern baldness. So if you're genetically predisposed and you put more testosterone into your body, it will break down into dihydrotestosterone, and it might accelerate baldness.
Okay.
So it's a bit more of a sort of a complex answer than just yes or no.
Okay, that's fine. I just tell people I got really high testosterone. That's why I'm bald. That's what I do. But listen, guys, go follow Ross on everything because I think I've seen a lot of you. I haven't seen your podcast yet, mate, but it's on my list to do. But I've seen a lot of your clips, and I think it's just knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb. It's all fucking useful information, and I love it. So go follow Ross on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and whatever else as well. But also rate the podcast as well. Follow the podcast. Give it a 5-star rating. Wherever platform you're on, whether it's Spotify, Amazon, Apple, YouTube, there will be an option to either like it, share it, give it a rating. We don't want 4 stars, only 5 stars, right, Ross? Only 5 stars.
Absolutely.
Because the 5 stars help push us to new audiences and help other people find this podcast. So until the next episode, guys, take care, look after yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.